The early morning sun painted the sky over Ujari Airfield in hues of gold and lavender. Parked under its soft glow was a sleek silver jet, the Okapi X-9, shimmering like a blade of light. It looked more like a creature of the skies than a man-made object. As its polished surface gleamed, a tall, well-dressed man approached it with a slow, confident walk. Obinna Kalu was 56, and every step he took echoed wisdom and patience. His brown skin glowed against his deep blue caftan, custom-stitched from fine Kano cotton. His salt-and-pepper beard was trimmed to perfection. There was a calm power in his posture, the kind that only decades of trials and triumphs could bring. "Excuse." "Me, sir," a young voice called from behind. Obinna turned slowly. A young airport worker, no older than 25, hurried toward him in a crisp beige uniform. A name tag read, Tayo. His face wore a polite smile, but there was hesitation in his eyes. "I'm sorry, this area is for scheduled passengers only. The lounge is back near the terminal," Tayo said, gesturing nervously. Obinna gave a small smile. He was used to this, being questioned before being seen. "I have a meeting with the crew of the Okapi X-9, he said softly. Tayo frowned slightly, flipping through a printed checklist. I don't see any appointments for inspections this morning. Are you with aviation security?" "No," Obinna said, reaching into his caftan for a document, but before he could show it, Tayo interrupted, his voice firmer now. "Sir, without proper clearance, I must ask you to leave this zone. Please return to the terminal. I can make a call to confirm." Obinna paused, hand halfway to his credentials. A familiar ache returned to his chest, not from surprise, but memory. 30 years in the aviation business, the founder of Kalu Aerotech, and yet here he was, still judged by his skin before his name. "Please check with Engineer Ayodele," Obinna said gently. "He should be expecting me." Tayo nodded and walked off. Alone now, Obinna looked at the jet being prepared. He smiled faintly. That jet wasn't just another machine. It was his, paid. For not by inheritance or luck, but by years of grinding work. His thoughts drifted back to 1984, Lagos Institute of Engineering. A young Obinna, barely 18, clutched an admission letter. Room 22, Adebayo Hall. As he approached the dorm, 3 boys leaned by the door. "You lost, bro?" "This is for engineering students," one smirked. Obinna straightened. "Yes, I'm here to study aerospace engineering." Their chuckles came low and dismissive. Just then, a man in a gray agbada stepped out from the shadows, Professor Babajide. "Obinna Kalu?" he asked. "Yes, sir. Your essay on alternative turbine models impressed our board. We expect big things. Come, let me show you around." As they walked away, the professor leaned in. "Don't ever let others decide your worth. Define it yourself." Those words became a compass through years of being mistaken for security staff in boardrooms, dismissed in investor meetings, and now, ironically, overlooked at the hangar of his own jet. "Mr. Kalu!" Obinna blinked back to the present. Tayo stood beside a gray-haired man in a sharp navy suit, Engineer Ayodele. "There seems to have been confusion," Ayodele said, extending his hand. "Welcome, sir." Tayo's face was pale. "Sir, I didn't realize you were the owner." Obinna finished with a kind tone. "It's all right. You were just doing your job." But it wasn't really all right. It was one more scratch added to a body already marked by years of invisible wounds. Still, Obinna had learned long ago that dignity was louder than anger. Today he would board his jet, his $65 million triumph. "Shall we begin the inspection?" he asked, drawing the conversation to a close. As they neared the Okapi X-9, Obinna noticed a young black pilot watching from across the hangar. Their eyes met. A silent message passed between them. "I see you. I know what it took." The pilot straightened proudly. Obinna nodded back. The legacy continued. In the cockpit, a woman adjusted her headset. Captain Adaeze Kim, 48, Nigerian-Korean, had flown private jets across 3 continents. She had battled typhoons, icy mountains, and cultural barriers. Being a woman of color in a field dominated by white men wasn't easy, but she had earned her place. Through the windshield, she watched Obinna approach. She stepped out and extended her hand. "Mr. Kalu, I'm Captain Kim. It's an honor. Your work in developing heat-resistant alloys changed what we learned in pilot school." Obinna's face softened into his first real smile of the day. "Captain Kim, the honor is mine. Your record, especially that emergency landing in the Himalayas, is why I asked for you." Adaeze felt genuinely seen. In her years of flying, few owners even knew her name. "Thank you, sir. I've assembled a solid team. Would you like to meet them?" Obinna nodded. She led him inside. The interior glowed with golden light and rich mahogany panels. As they walked, she introduced her crew. First Officer Ifeanyi, the young pilot Obinna had noticed earlier. Grace Okoro, the lead flight attendant with 20 years of experience. Engineer Musa Diko, who had worked with Adaeze since her early flights. Ayodele pointed out the handcrafted leather seats, the wide-screen display, and a bed dressed in soft aso-oke fabric. But Obinna wasn't here for glamour. He asked about engine specs, fuel ratios, and the new autopilot interface. Ayodele chuckled. "Most of our buyers want to know about wine storage." Obinna smiled. "I'm not most buyers. This is the fruit of my life's labor." He placed a palm on the cabin wall. "These panels, they're from Kalu Tech's newest alloy, aren't they?" Ayodele blinked. "Yes, actually. I'm surprised you noticed." "I can tell just by touch," Obinna said. "I molded their formula with my own hands, in a garage, with nothing but rejected grants and cheap tools." Behind them, Tayo listened, eyes wide, his earlier embarrassment transforming into something else, admiration. Captain Kim noticed. This, she thought, is how change happens, not with shouting, but with brilliance that no one can deny. When they reached the cockpit, Obinna asked, "Captain, what would you upgrade for long-haul trips? I'll be flying to London and Accra often." Adaeze considered. "Satellite comms could be stronger over the ocean, and maybe extra crew sleeping space." "Consider it done," Obinna said, making notes on his tablet. "My team's comfort is top priority." As they exited, a young woman in a wine-colored suit approached. She walked with elegance and purpose. Her dark skin glowed, and a tablet was tucked under one arm. "Dad!" she called. Obinna turned, face lighting up. "Right on time?" "Sorry, board meeting ran late," she said. He turned to the crew. "Everyone, meet Amara Kalu, Chief Operating Officer of Kalu Aerotech." Amara shook hands confidently. When she reached Tayo, she paused. "Tayo, right? We were in business school together. You were great in macroeconomics." Tayo blinked, stunned. "Amara Kalu?" Yes, we did. You always topped the class." She laughed. "I try to keep up with family tradition," as she linked arms with her father. She looked at the jet and smiled. "So, Papa, is it everything you dreamed?" Obinna gazed at the Okapi X-9, the plane, the people, the moment. "Everything and more," he whispered. They turned toward the stairs. Behind them, the crew exchanged glances, sensing they had just witnessed something far greater than an inspection, a legacy, a revolution. And it was just beginning. Captain Adaeze. Kim noticed Tayo standing a little distance from the group, his face thoughtful, almost distant. She quietly stepped over. "First day on the job?" she asked kindly. Tayo nodded, his voice barely, above a whisper. "And I've already messed it up. Badly." "We all have moments like that," Adaeze said gently. "The question is, what will you do with it?" He looked down. I never thought of myself as someone who could be biased. Most people don't, Adais replied softly. But recognizing it, that's where change begins. Before they could continue, Engineer Iodele called out, raising a glass. It was time for the ceremonial toast. Everyone gathered as glasses were passed around. Obinna Kalu stood in front of the Okapi X9, sunlight forming a glowing halo around the jet's shining body. He lifted his glass. To new beginnings, he said, and to the incredible team that will help me soar through the skies, and sometimes through storms that have nothing to do with weather. Laughter broke out, warm and light, easing any remaining tension. Glasses clinked. First Officer Ifeanyi stepped forward. Mr. Kalu, if I may, he said with emotion. Your journey is why I fly today. I followed your story since I was a teenager. You inspired me. Obinna smiled, visibly touched. Thank you, Ifeanyi. If I've learned one thing, it's that the strongest planes we ever build are bridges between people. He glanced at Tayo, who looked down, holding his glass tightly. And bridges, Obinna added, require understanding, forgiveness, and courage. As the team began to prepare final paperwork, Obinna walked alongside Amara near the jet. Another wait outside moment, she murmured. Obinna sighed. Some things change. Some things still need time. You could have made a scene, Amara said. Had him removed, Obinna chuckled. The man I was 20 years ago might have, but I have nothing left to prove. He looked at her with pride. Your generation is leading now. I see you in those boardrooms, holding your ground. Amara squeezed his hand. I learned from the best, but sometimes I wonder, will it ever really change? It already has, Obinna said, nodding toward Ifeanyi and Tayo, now deep in respectful conversation. Maybe not fast, but it has. Adaize approached with final documents. Her professional demeanor softened. Mr. Kalu, once you sign these, we can depart whenever you're ready. Weather looks clear all the way to Chicago. Obinna took the pen. It felt heavier than expected. As he signed, his mind drifted. He thought of his parents, both long gone, of their sacrifices, of late nights working odd jobs to send him to school, of their voices telling him, excellence cannot be denied. Thank you, Captain, he said, handing the signed papers back. Let's go home. In Chicago, dawn wrapped the city in golden light. From the 65th floor of his penthouse, Obinna cradled a mug of fresh coffee, gazing at the awakening skyline. Today, he would board the Okapi X9 and fly to New York for what could be the most important meetings in Kalu Aerotech's history. His tablet buzzed. A call from Helen Foster, his longtime head of public relations. Diane, he answered, calm. Have you seen the Wall Street Journal? His stomach dropped. I was just enjoying my coffee. What page? Business section. Centerpiece. Aerotech just unveiled a new aircraft material. Their stock jumped 28%. Obinna opened the article. As he read the technical specs, a cold realization settled in. The material sounded almost identical to a prototype his team had been developing, in secret. This can't be a coincidence, he said. Someone leaked it. And there's more, Helen said grimly. Elliot Vaughn has been meeting with our biggest clients, claiming they're months ahead of us. The name struck a nerve. Elliot, once a we, friend at Lagos Institute, now a rival. He had walked away from the very research that launched Kalu Aerotech, and now he was back. Tell legal to prep a full response. I'll cut New York trip short. Emergency board meeting tomorrow. Already done, Helen said. But Marcus, there's something else. The article quotes an anonymous source saying your contracts came from diversity quotas, not innovation. Obinna closed his eyes. A familiar burn lit beneath his ribs. After all he had built, all he had proven, he was still being questioned. "Send the article to Adaiz," he said quietly. "We leave in 2 hours." He stood at the window, staring at the reflection of a man shaped by decades of rejection, resilience, and grit. Then the intercom buzzed. "Sir, there's a Ms. Okoro here. She says she's from your flight crew. Send her up." 2 minutes later, Grace Okoro stepped inside. Her uniform was neat as always, but her face carried concern. "Mr. Kalu, forgive the intrusion. I didn't want to raise alarms at the airport, but something doesn't feel right." Obinna gestured her in. "Tell me." "Last night I got a strange call from someone claiming to be airport maintenance. They asked about our travel plans, about access codes." "Did you share anything?" "Of course not," she said, firm. "But this morning I overheard Adaizi speaking about inconsistencies in the aircraft's logs. Someone altered the maintenance entries." Obinna's mind spun. It was connected. The leak, the smear campaign, the sabotage. "You told anyone else?" "Only you." "Thank you, Grace. You did the right thing. There's coffee in the kitchen if you need a moment." As she walked away, Obinna picked up his phone. "Adaizi," he said when she answered. "We may have a problem. I need a full security sweep of the Okapi X-9 before takeoff." Captain Adaizi Kim's voice sharpened with purpose. "Understood. I'll trust only my immediate crew." "Does this have anything to do with the maintenance issue I flagged this morning?" she asked. "Possibly," Obinna replied. "Grace just informed me about suspicious calls regarding our flight schedule." Adaiz lowered her voice. "Sir, I should mention something. Tayo was asking odd questions yesterday about your usual flight, routes, security at different airports, and even ground access." A chill ran down Obinna's spine. Had he been wrong about the boy? Was the hangar incident more than just a misunderstanding? "Keep this between us for now," he said. "I'll be at the hangar in 1 hour. Bring Ifeanyi. No one else." After the call, Obinna returned to the kitchen. Grace Okoro was sipping coffee, still visibly tense. "Ms. Okoro," he said, "thank you again. Your discretion and loyalty mean a great deal." Grace nodded. "Mr. Kalu, in my 20 years in the air, I've served everyone from kings to actors. Most never bother to learn our names, but you always ask how our families are." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "My father was a school cleaner. He faced the kind of prejudice you experienced yesterday. He would have bowed his head and walked away. But you showed that young man another way, a better way." Obinna's heart stirred. "We all choose how to react to the hands we're dealt. Sometimes education works better than confrontation." Grace stood. "True, but not everyone deserves a second chance. Just be careful who you trust." With that, she thanked him for the coffee and quietly left. An hour later, Obinna's black sedan rolled into the private airstrip. The Okapi X-9 sat under the bright morning sun, pristine and powerful. Yet Obinna's thoughts were shadowed by uncertainty. Captain Adiaz and First Officer Ifeanyi were already there, walking around the aircraft inspecting every inch. "Captain Kim," Obinna called out. She turned, face serious. "Sir, we haven't found anything conclusive yet, but the logbook shows someone accessed the plane late last night. Could it have been routine maintenance?" Adaizi shook her head. "No, sir. The technician name listed was off duty. I've asked security for camera footage." Obinna nodded, years of corporate instinct buzzing through his nerves. "Where's the rest of the crew?" "Grace arrived 20 minutes ago. She's prepping the cabin. Engineer Musa called. He's caught in traffic." "And Tayo?" Adaizi hesitated. "He was here early, very eager to help with pre-flight checks." Obinna, Adaizi, and Ifeanyi exchanged quiet glances. No one spoke their fears aloud. "I want to speak to him." Alone. Adaze looked concerned. Sir, if he's involved... Obinna raised a hand. Captain, I was handling difficult meetings before you flew your first solo. Trust me. She gave a reluctant nod. Ifeanyi pointed toward the lounge. Tayo was there, hunched over flight plans, checking his phone. Obinna approached. The boy looked up, startled. Tayo, let's talk. He nodded, voice high with nervousness. Of course, sir. Everything okay with the flight? Obinna gestured toward a quiet corner. They walked. Then he turned to face the young man directly. Yesterday, you made an assumption about me because of how I looked. Today, I find myself wondering about you. But the difference is, I have evidence. Tayo froze. Someone tampered with this jet, Obinna continued. And you've been asking unusual questions. Tayo's face drained of color. Sir, I can explain. I hope you can, Obinna said evenly. Because right now, it looks like you're part of something very serious, potentially endangering lives. No, I swear I'm not... Tayo faltered. His eyes widened. Wait, you think I'm working for Elliot Vaughn? Obinna blinked. You know Elliot? Tayo nodded slowly. I haven't been honest, sir. My full name is Tayo Vaughn Matt. Elliot Vaughn is my uncle. The truth struck Obinna like a slap. The same Elliot who betrayed their shared research. Now his nephew was on Obinna's crew? So yesterday's disrespect, was that intentional? No, that part was real, and I regret it. I didn't know who you were. But my uncle, he got me this job. Said it would be a good entry into the industry. At first it was, but then he started asking questions. And you gave him answers, Obinna said sharply. Only the basics, Tayo said quickly. Stuff anyone could Google. But when he asked about access codes and security details, I knew something was wrong. So I started feeding him false info. Obinna searched the boy's face. Why should I believe you? Tayo reached into his jacket. Because I recorded him, I was going to give this to you today. He played the audio. Elliot's voice filled the space. Did you get access to the composite samples? Tayo's voice answered, tense. Uncle Seb, I can't do this. That's theft. Elliot. Don't be dramatic. Washington stole from me. This is justice. Tayo. That's not what I've seen, not what I've read, not what I've felt. Elliot. You're falling for his self-made story? Without affirmative action, he'd be nothing. Tayo paused the recording. Obinna said nothing, his eyes fixed on the horizon. I'm sorry, Tayo whispered. I didn't realize how deep his anger went. But when I saw how you carry yourself, how you treat your crew, I knew I didn't want to be part of his plan. There was silence. Then Obinna spoke. The hardest thing in business, Tayo, is learning who you can trust. Sometimes your enemies become your allies. Sometimes your friends become your biggest threat. He stepped closer. The question is, which will you be? Tayo looked him in the eye. I want to be someone worthy of your trust, Mr. Kalu. Obinna nodded. Send me the recording, then go tell Captain Adaze I've cleared you to continue. But hear this. If you're lying, I didn't build a billion-dollar company by being soft on betrayal. Understood, sir. And thank you. Not everyone gives second chances. As Tayo walked away, Obinna's phone buzzed. A message from Amara lit up the screen. Board is nervous about Aerotech's announcement. Need you back ASAP. Everything okay with the flight? He replied quickly. Flight proceeding as planned. Tell legal to prepare a major counterattack. We're not just defending anymore, we're going on the offensive. Tucking his phone into his jacket, Obinna looked toward the Okapi X9, shining in the sun like a monument. Elliot Vaughn had underestimated him before. Years ago, the man had walked away from their joint research, calling it a waste of time. Now he was making the same mistake, thinking Obinna was weak, vulnerable to rumors and sabotage. But what Elliot had forgotten was the most important lesson from their university. Obinna Kalu never gave up. Not in the lab, not in life, not in the face of prejudice, and certainly not when the empire he built was under attack. The Okapi X9 wasn't a luxury toy. It was proof. Proof that persistence could shatter any ceiling. As the jet soared over the clouds and began its descent toward New York's Tebow Airport, Obinna sat in the quiet of the cabin. He reviewed his presentation for the investor meeting, adjusting a few points to address the backlash stirred by Aerotech's announcement. Grace Okoro approached with a fresh cup of coffee. "We'll be landing in about 20 minutes, Mr. Kalu," she said. "Thank you, Grace." He accepted the cup. "And thank you again for sounding the alarm this morning. Your instincts may have saved this company." She nodded, face calm but serious. "In my experience, sir, people show their true character when pressure rises. You handled today with grace and precision." Obinna smiled. As she returned to the cabin, he looked back down at his notes, but his mind wandered to Tayo, who had been attentive all flight, eager to prove his integrity. The boy's recording had already been sent to legal. Now they were preparing to expose Aerotech's attempted sabotage. Captain Adaisi's voice came over the intercom. "Mr. Kalu, we're beginning our final approach. Please secure your seatbelt." Obinna fastened his belt and glanced out the window. The skyline of New York spread beneath him like a map of memories. It was here, 3 decades earlier, that he had secured his first major contract after dozens of rejections. The same city had seen him at his lowest, working from a one-room office, and at his highest, ringing the bell at the stock exchange when Kalu Aerotech went public. And now it would see another pivotal chapter. The wheels touched down with a smooth hum. The jet taxied to a private hangar, where transportation already waited. Obinna's phone buzzed. A message from Diane. "Elliot just went live on CNBC. He's claiming Skyward's tech was stolen from him." Obinna quickly turned on the cabin television. There he was, Elliot Vaughn, older, his silver hair combed sharply, his smile thin and bitter. "What Obinna Kalu doesn't tell you," Elliot was saying, "is that the core technology behind his materials came from work we did together in university. He simply recycled 30-year-old concepts." The interviewer pressed him. "Are you saying Kalu Aerotech misrepresented the originality of its products?" "Let's just say," Elliot replied with smug calm, "that sometimes contracts go to companies for reasons other than merit." Obinna watched, jaw set. He'd heard this tune before, 20 years ago, when an investor had pulled out after hearing whispers that his government contracts were the result of racial quotas. Lies were easy to spread, and they always seemed to grow wings at the wrong time. The jet came to a full stop. Adaisi's voice came through the cabin again. "Welcome to New York, Mr. Kalu. Ground transport is ready." He turned off the TV and stood. Grace approached, holding out his jacket. "Bad news?" she asked. "Old news," he said. "Just rewrapped." He slipped on the jacket and adjusted his tie. Elliot Vaughn has no idea what he's just started. Stepping off the jet, he spotted Amara waiting on the tarmac, looking sharp in a navy blue suit. Her face was all business. "I saw the interview," she said as they briefly embraced. "Legal is already drafting a cease and desist." "Good," Obinna replied, heading to the car with her. "But we're going further. It's time to tell the full story. How Elliot walked away when it got hard and I stayed behind to finish what he quit." Amara gave him a sideways glance. "That's not like you. You always say success is the best revenge." "And it is," he agreed. "But sometimes the truth must be spoken out loud." As they reached the car, Tayo exited the plane behind them, carrying Obinna's briefcase. "Mr. Kalu," he said quietly, offering the case. "I've also sent an email with more recordings. My uncle's been saying things about the company to other industry partners." Obinna accepted the case. "That took courage." "Not really," Tayo replied. "It's just the right thing, something I should have done earlier." As he returned to the crew, Amara raised an eyebrow. You trust him now? I'm giving him a chance, Obinna said. The same way Dr. Babajid gave me one all those years ago. Sometimes people surprise you. The car pulled into Manhattan, weaving through traffic. Father and daughter reviewed their strategy for the upcoming press conference. They weren't just defending anymore, they were taking back control, turning Elliot's accusations into a platform for truth. You know, Amara said, glancing at the skyline, when I was little, I used to get angry when people underestimated. You, I wanted you to shout back. Obinna chuckled. And I always told you. That excellence is the best response, she finished. But sometimes, she added quietly, excellence isn't enough. Sometimes you have to stand up and say, no more. Obinna nodded. Today is one of those days. The car arrived at the Meridian Hotel. Inside, the grand ballroom buzzed with tension. Reporters, investors, and analysts filled every seat. At the front row sat Adayaze, Ifeanyi, and Tayo, each invited by Obinna to witness what came next. Backstage, Obinna adjusted his tie. Helen approached, reviewing final notes. Elliot's already here, she murmured. Front row, far right. Smug as ever. This isn't about revenge, Obinna said calmly. It's about truth. Amara joined them. The samples from Chicago are set. Legal confirmed all patent records are ready. And the special guest? Obinna asked. He's in the side room, waiting. Obinna took a deep breath. The lights dimmed, the ballroom silent as Obinna took a brief step back from the podium. The truth had been laid bare, through photos, through facts, through voices that could not be denied. But this moment felt different. Not just another corporate defense. This was about legacy. Behind the curtain, Dean stepped forward with a clipboard. Ready? Obinna gave a soft smile. I've been ready for 30 years. Camera flashes erupted as he returned to the spotlight. He stood tall, unwavering, as if the floor beneath him were carved from stone. Good afternoon, he said, voice firm and deep, carrying through the room. Many of you have heard Aerotech's announcement, a so-called revolutionary composite, material that, oddly enough, resembles what we've spent years developing. From the podium, Obinna could see Elliot in the front row, arms crossed, lips curled in a dismissive grin. Normally, Obinna continued, we'd address such claims through legal channels. But because Mr. Vaughn has taken the liberty of questioning the very foundation of our work, our technology, and the integrity of our contracts, I've chosen to speak plainly. A new image filled the screen behind him, a faded black and white photo of two young men in a cluttered lab. One of them was Obinna, the other, Elliot. This was taken in 1985, Obinna said. Elliot Vaughn and I working on something we called Project Osprey, our attempt to design heat-resistant composites for aerospace applications. The slide changed. A page from an old lab journal appeared, dated April 12, 1987. After 2 years of failed tests, Elliot gave up. He called the project a dead end. He paused. But I didn't. While he moved on, I stayed. In basements, between night shifts, borrowing lab space, building prototypes with my own hands. And 3 years later, I succeeded. A slow ripple of murmurs moved through the audience. That success became the foundation of Kalu Aerotech. It became the first of many breakthroughs. Obinna stepped aside as more slides flashed. Notes, designs, photos of tests, blueprints. Then came the patent filed in 1990. I didn't inherit this company. I didn't stumble into it. I built it from the ashes of rejection with nothing but belief. In the front row, Elliot shifted uncomfortably. The smirk was gone. His shoulders tense, Obinna's voice grew stronger. Over the decades, we've continued building, improving, innovating, and yes, securing contracts not through handouts, but by outperforming our competition in blind third-party trials. He walked to a nearby table where 2 samples were laid out. "This," he said, holding one, "is what Aerotech unveiled today." He held up the other. "And this is our Gen 3 composite, in production for 5 years." Photographers clicked. Away. Reporters scribbled notes. Investors leaned forward. Obinna turned back to the mic. "But this isn't just about technology, it's about assumptions." His voice softened slightly, yet grew more powerful. "Assumptions that people like me only get ahead through favors, that our contracts must come from diversity quotas, not innovation, that we don't belong in boardrooms, or on tarmacs, or at podiums like this." He looked out into the audience and met Tayo's gaze. "I've been told to wait outside more, times than I can count, in banks, in offices, even next to the very aircraft I built." A hush fell, but I chose a different response. I chose excellence, not because it was easy, but because it was the only way forward. Behind him, the screen shifted again. Photos of Obinna receiving awards, of factory workers assembling parts, of planes flying high with Kalu Aerotech components on board. "These weren't gifts," he said. "They were earned. By me. And by the brilliant, diverse team I work with every day." He paused and looked again toward the crowd. Now, about the claims that our government contracts are anything less than merit-based. A new slide appeared. Charts, data, lab names. Every contract we've received came after independent blind testing. Our materials consistently outperformed every other competitor, including Aerotech. He turned slightly. "But don't take my word for it." He gestured toward the curtain. "Please welcome Dr. Babajide, the lead evaluator on these tests and former director of Nigeria's Materials Innovation Lab." From the wings stepped a dignified, elderly man, supported by a polished cane. He moved slowly but with pride. Gasps echoed through the hall. Dr. Babajide adjusted the mic. "I've known Obinna Kalu since his university days. I've seen him work through setbacks that would make most men quit. The suggestion that he needed handouts? It insults every hour of labor I've witnessed." He turned toward Elliot. "The truth? Kalu Aerotech's materials didn't just pass. They dominated every test I oversaw." Thunderous applause erupted. When the crowd quieted, Obinna returned to the podium. "We stand by our work, by our patents, by our people, and we will continue pushing the limits of aerospace innovation." He let the words hang in the air. "But more than that, we will continue building a culture where people are judged not by how they look or where they came from, but by the strength of their ideas, by their results." He looked directly at Tayo, then at Adaeze, then Grace, Ifeanyi, Amara. In aviation, as in life, what matters isn't who boards the plane, but how far you can fly it. A final image filled the screen, a photo of Obinna, decades younger, in a dusty garage holding up a tiny prototype wing. That young man was told he didn't belong in labs or on patents. Today, he owns both. The crowd erupted in cheers. Reporters raised their hands. The floor opened for questions. The applause had not yet faded when Obinna turned back to face the sea of reporters. Cameras still clicked. Hands began to raise. But before the first question could be asked, Elliot Vaughn rose from his seat. His face, tight with anger or shame, no one could tell, was flushed. Without a word, he strode toward the exit, his expensive shoes clicking across the ballroom floor. No rebuttal, no press statement, just silence. Obinna watched him go. He felt no triumph in the retreat. Vindication, yes, but also a faint sadness. There had once been a time when they dreamed together. Two young minds in a lab full of promise. That road had forked long ago. He turned back toward the press, ready to continue. Meanwhile, in the front row, Amara, Tayo, and Adaeze sat still. They had seen something far greater than a corporate defense. They had witnessed how to meet prejudice not with rage, but with brilliance, not with fury, but with facts. Tayo leaned slightly toward Adaeze. That's the kind of leader I want to become, he whispered. Adaze nodded. He's not just defending a company, he's defending what's right. As the conference drew to a close, investors were already whispering predictions. Skyward stock was likely to recover fast. Very fast. Backstage, Obinna was surrounded by journalists, analysts, even a few politicians, but his eyes scanned for someone else. He found them. Amara, Tayo, and Adaizi stood quietly near the stage edge. He moved toward them. Captain Amara, he said with a smile, thank you for being here. All three of you. Amara returned the smile. Sir, it was an honor and a lesson. One day, Obinna said. You may find yourself in this very position, defending your work, your worth against those who doubt it. Stand tall. Tayo stepped forward, eyes steady. If I may, sir, how do you stay calm when people insult you? When they treat your success like an accident? Obinna paused, then glanced at Adaze, who also seemed eager to hear the answer. It's a choice, he said. Every time I'm confronted with bias, I ask myself, will anger move my mission forward, or will excellence speak louder? He smiled. Excellence lasts longer. It echoes. Tayo, who had quietly joined them, now found the courage to speak. Mr. Kalu, I want to say something, he began, voice low. When I first met you, I judged you. I made the same mistake. My uncle's been making for decades. I thought I knew the truth. Obinna studied him for a long moment, then nodded. The difference, Tayo, is that you recognized your mistake, and you changed. That matters. Amara, ever direct, asked, what happens now with Aerotech? Obinna's eyes darkened with resolve. Our legal team will handle the theft. As for Elliot, sometimes the hardest person to convince of your value is someone who knew you before you discovered it yourself. An assistant approached. Sir, your investors are ready for the private briefing. Obinna turned to the group. Captain Amara, we'll be returning to Lagos tomorrow morning. Please ensure the aircraft is prepared for an 8 a.m. departure. Yes, sir, Amara responded with crisp professionalism. Then Obinna turned to Tayo. Mr. Matayo, I know your role on this crew came through family ties. Given everything, I would understand if you wanted a reassignment. Tayo stood straighter. With your permission, sir, I'd like to stay. I have a lot to learn. About flight. About people. Obinna smiled slowly. Permission granted. Some of the best lessons come from unexpected teachers. He gave them a final nod and walked away, heading toward the next meeting, leaving the crew to reflect on everything they'd just witnessed. Amara turned to the others. That wasn't just about patents or tech. That was about courage. Tayo added, dignity under fire. That's real power. Tayo didn't speak right away. When he did, it was almost to himself. All my life, he said, I heard stories from my uncle about how his ideas were stolen, how other people got ahead because of handouts. I believed him. I never questioned it. And now? Adaizi asked gently. Now I know why my dad stopped talking to him years ago, Tayo said, shaking his head. He knew. As they exited the ballroom, the conversation turned to preparations for the next flight. But for Tayo, something deeper had changed. His view of Obinna, of history, of himself. The next morning, the skies above New York were clear. At the airport, the Kalu Aerotech Gulfstream G650 glimmered in the sunlight like a polished diamond. Inside, Grace arranged fresh flowers in small crystal vases. James checked the engineering console. Amara and Tayo completed their external inspection with practiced precision. Tayo moved through the cabin, performing his tasks with fresh energy, checking every detail twice. All systems are good, Tayo said after the walk around. Thank you, Amara replied, ticking off the last item on her checklist. Mr. Kalu should arrive soon, Let's be ready. Just then she noticed Tayo standing still, a thoughtful look on his face. Something on your mind? She asked. Tayo hesitated. Captain, do you think it's really possible to unlearn everything? The beliefs you were raised with? The biases you didn't even know you had? Amara considered her words carefully. I think that's exactly what growth is, Tayo. Seeing what you didn't before, and choosing better every day. She smiled softly. In aviation, we call it situational awareness, always watching, always adjusting. Tayo smiled back, feeling understood. Moments later, a sleek black SUV pulled up. Obinna stepped out, looking sharp in a navy suit. Amara followed, still finishing a call. Good morning, Captain Amara, Obinna greeted as he approached. Are we cleared for takeoff? All systems nominal, sir, Amara replied. Ready when you are. Obinna turned to Tayo. Mr. Matayo, I have something for you. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a small brown package. It arrived this morning, from your father. Tayo looked surprised. From my dad? Apparently, your uncle paid him a visit last night. It didn't go well, Obinna said. Your father thought you should have this. As the others boarded, Tayo stayed behind. Slowly, he opened the package. Inside was a worn, leather-bound journal and a handwritten note. Tayo, your uncle came by last night, furious about what happened at the press conference. I stood by you, defended you. He told me everything. This journal belonged to your grandfather, my father. It's filled with stories, real stories. He flew with black pilots back when no one wanted to see them succeed. They were brave and forgotten. Now you know why I taught you to question every story, even mine. Love, Dad. Tayo turned the pages, hands trembling. Inside were names, maps, faded photos, notes about test flights with men who had been erased from the history books. He tucked the journal into his pocket. Mr. Matayo, Grace called from the top of the aircraft stairs. We're ready. Tayo climbed aboard with new purpose. Inside, he saw Obinna and Amara reviewing notes, calm and focused. Legacy builder, legacy inheritor. In the cockpit, Amara and Tayo ran, their final checks. Tower, this is Skyward 7500, Amara said into her headset. Ready for departure. As the engines roared to life and the aircraft began taxiing down the runway, Tayo looked out the window. The skyline of Manhattan grew smaller. But something inside him grew stronger. This flight wasn't just a trip to Chicago. It was a step in rewriting what he believed, who he was. Obinna gazed out the window, the clouds rolling past in endless waves. 30 years had gone by, but sometimes it still felt like he was that young man in the MIT lab, wrestling with impossible ideas while the world tried to shut him out. Hard to believe it's been 3 decades, he murmured to Amara, seated across from him. She looked at him with a knowing smile. The difference is, now you own the lab, Dad. Obinna let out a soft chuckle. Yes, I suppose I do. But his smile faded a little. Ownership comes with responsibility, not just for what we create, but for who we bring along with us. His eyes drifted to Tayo, who was helping Grace with the beverage service. That young man reminds me of myself, he said, trying to make sense of what he was told, and what he's starting to discover. Amara tilted her head. You're being generous to someone who judged you before knowing you. Obinna shrugged. Maybe. Or maybe I just believe that transformation only happens when someone leaves the door open. In the cockpit, Amara guided the plane with precision, shifting course slightly to avoid turbulence. Captain Amara, Tayo said during a calm stretch, can I ask you something personal? Go ahead, she replied, eyes still scanning the sky. Have you ever felt what Mr. Kalu talked about? Being underestimated because of who you are, not what you can do? Amara's voice softened. Every female pilot has stories, every black professional too. And being both? It's like flying with extra weight, and no one's helping lift it. Tayo nodded slowly. Mr. Kalu carried it all with grace. That's why he's the one flying highest, Amara replied. He shows us what's possible. Back in the cabin, Tayo approached Obinna with a steaming cup of coffee. Just how you like it, sir. Thank you, Tayo. Tayo paused. Sir, I've been reading my grandfather's journal. He flew with black pilots back in the 50s. They saved lives, but history forgot them. Obinna looked up with deep respect. The history of flight is filled with unsung heroes. Maybe you'll help share their stories one day. I'd like that, Tayo said with quiet resolve. Obinna turned back to the window. At 35,000 feet, all boundaries, race, class, assumptions, faded beneath the clouds. But he knew they'd return when they landed. They always did. The difference now was that those lines no longer defined him. He had long ago learned that excellence wasn't just a response to bias. It was a way of living, of leading, of lasting. The Gulfstream G650 glided westward carrying not just a crew, but a shared story of second chances and silent battles, of legacy and rebirth. Inside that cabin, strangers had become allies, wounds had become wisdom, and history had started to bend, just slightly, toward justice. The city of Chicago shimmered on the horizon. Obinna checked his watch. It was nearly time. The landing gear engaged. The wheels touched down with grace. Engineered precision, meeting lived experience. Welcome to Chicago, Mr. Kalu, came Amara's voice over the intercom. Local time is 9:47 a.m. On behalf of the entire crew, thank you for flying with us. Obinna gathered his things. Through the window, he saw skyward executives lined up near the hangar, waiting to greet him. He took a breath. He had arrived. Again. But this time, not just as a passenger, not just as the CEO. He was arriving as the author of his story. And behind him stood a crew forever changed by him. A man who had taken a moment of exclusion and turned it into a movement. Amara stood tall. Tayo beside her, Grace alert, James confident, and Tayo, no longer uncertain, but reborn in understanding. Obinna paused at the cabin door. The morning sun spilled in, bright and bold. He stepped out into the light, the owner of the aircraft, the founder of Skyward Innovations. A man defined not by what others said he was, but by everything he chose to become. And from the doorway behind him, Tayo watched in silent awe. Their eyes met, just for a moment. It was the gaze of two men on parallel journeys, one nearing legacy, one just beginning. And in that glance, the truth became clear. No one can tell you to wait outside a place you already belong in, not when you've earned it, not when you've built it, not when you've flown too far to be grounded again. If this story moved you, give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that inspire, challenge, and uplift.